I hope you had an opportunity to try out your XML HTTP request object and return back some data, because this lesson we're going to dive deeper into some more options that you have within your XML HTTP request object. So we saw that whenever if we were to console log that out, we can see that object. So if we do the AJAX object, we see we've got a number of other options here. So we've got one on progress. Right now it's null. On load, right now it's null. So you can use those as well because they're at different ready states. And they can get fired off. So if we do AJAX on progress, so this one is going to fire off every time on progress. So every time on progress has a value. So now at the end, once we've got all the information back, on progress has no value, it's null. But we can log out the value of the ready state if we want. So we can grab the console there and we can get rid of the state changed and we can just do progress. And we'll write out the ready state as well as the status. So we see that progress is ready state 3. And we could do something if we wanted to at that point. So these are just some more options. A lot of times you won't see these, but of course you can use them if you need them within your loading process. And remember, going back to what we saw with the ready state, we see that number 3 is when we're downloading. So on progress is essentially when we're downloading that content. And then we've got the last one that's on load. So this one fires off. And going back to our ready states, this one fires off when we're done. So when I refresh, we see that it's fired off, we're done. And if we go into listing out our object, we see that this one as well, it's the on load. So it's fired off. So it is there. And it does have a function associated with it. So we do have something happening with it. So you can use that as well, but it doesn't always work the same way seamlessly across browsers. If you encounter any errors, the best way to go is usually to check the status is 400 and the ready state is 4, because that's the best way to know that you're ready to retrieve and make use of your data. So the onload was actually added in later version of JavaScript. So it's not ready state's been around since the origination of the object, and this one's been added in later. So if you encounter any error on the network or you're trying to abort the operation, the onload isn't going to work as well. It doesn't work across all the browsers. So not ideal solution. So I would just stick with this one to make sure that your content is loaded. So next objective is that let's make use of some of this content that we've loaded. So we've loaded in that results array. And usually you have a trigger that triggers off the loading. So let's create a button. So what this will do is whenever we click it, what I want to do is I want to trigger off this AJAX request and load some new data in our output. And we saw earlier with output that we can retrieve back some information. So let's update that as well. We'll create a variable to hold our output. We can do document get element by ID. Let's grab the output object. So grab it into the variable output. So that will allow us to be ready to use it. And we can get rid of this. So we're just going to comment it out, because we're not going to be making use of that stuff. We can also go down to, so let's grab that button as well, and we'll add an event listener. So again, we'll use get element by ID. So we need to grab the element, and we can do it all within one statement. We can do the add event listener if we want to do that, or we could separate that out. So because we've grabbed it as an object, let's separate it out. So button click, and then we'll add the event listener on the new line here. So add event listener, and the event that we're listening for is click. Whenever it gets clicked, we fire off a function, and then within this function, this is where we make all the magic happen. So let's fire off, and we'll load Ajax. And then within here, so let's set up a function, and we'll call it load Ajax. Give us the ability to get to have more control over when the content loads, and also it gives us the ability to make more calls to that Ajax data. So let's go back into our browser, open it up, try it out. So whenever we click, we load results. So there we go. So it's working properly. And next step is to just update our output element with the content that we want to output there. And let's try for the same thing that we did earlier, where we were getting the user information. So we were getting the user's first name, last name, and their thumbnail. So let's output that into the console. So try this out for yourself. Set up the clickable button to load the data from randomuser.me/API, and next output that content into the output element, and I'll show you the solution coming up.